The following program is in no way intended to replace your doctor's advice or treatment program, nor should it be used as a tool for the purpose of self-diagnosis.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Your Health, Your Choice, the program where we educate and you evaluate what we say and use your medics to treat whatever diseases you may be facing. So we begin this evening looking at cholesterol. We're going to give you a cholesterol 101 course. And we have with us, as usual, Dr. Claude Khan, community diabetologist.
Good to be back.
And
good to have you back. You've not been on the program for a few weeks, and some of my patients have been asking specifically, when are you returning? So good to have you back on the program.
Good to feel needed sometimes.
You're always needed, my dear.
Okay, so this is about patient education, and it's a community health program, Your Health, Your Choice. We want to empower you to be able to treat and prevent, actually, many of the diseases that are preventable. And cholesterol does cause so many problems and diseases. Do you want to start by defining what is cholesterol?
Yeah. Let me just say that there's been a lot of, again, myths and misconceptions about cholesterol. The goalposts have been moving over the years about what is a good cholesterol, what is a bad cholesterol, what are foods that are good for you in terms of cholesterol. So I think there's some degree of confusion over this. There's also, and as usual, there are the conspiracy theorists that think Big Pharma is out to get us and out to get everybody on cholesterol drugs, lowering drugs. So we battle against all of that as healthcare professionals. But basically, cholesterol is associated with fatty foods, and it's a waxy substance, a fatty substance that is present in the bloodstream. I just want to bring up slide 1 on the PowerPoint. Slide 1, because what this slide shows is that there are actually two sources of cholesterol. Now, most people on the left-hand side of your slide will say that cholesterol comes from the food you eat. But actually, surprisingly, about 75% of the cholesterol circulating in our blood is coming from the liver.
Oh, so that organ there is our liver?
It's the liver.
Right.
So we could just come off that slide. So that's a very important point to make, that while lifestyle and, today, again, several patients I saw, we emphasized lifestyle changes before we got into medication. But it's important to remember, like diabetes, lifestyle is only part of the story, because you might be eating well, but you might be in one of those groups of patients where your liver is producing, well, in any event, 75%.
The liver is always producing.
Yes, 75% of the cholesterol circulating in our bodies is produced from the liver. And of course, the liver is the organ just on the right-hand side, just below the rib cage. And, many people have fatty livers. That's not just due to cholesterol, but many people have fatty livers, and fatty livers are associated with diabetes, metabolic syndrome. But the key thing to remember here is that cholesterol is derived from foods, but your body produces most of the cholesterol.
Right. Okay, so we're going to be looking at symptoms. We're going to be looking at testing. What is bad cholesterol, good cholesterol, total cholesterol, all kinds of weird and wonderful words like triglycerides. And you mentioned, that, okay, so we've got the liver, we've got foods, so diet, behavior modification is important, dietary therapy is important, but there's also the genetic factor.
Right. So
and even gender.
Gender, yes. But can I just make one point, which, there was at one point a lot of argument in talking about, is there a lower limit for cholesterol? Because similarly to there's a lower limit for blood pressure. There's a lower limit for blood sugar. But when we talk about a lower limit for cholesterol, we say that no low cholesterol is too low. Okay. Having said that, cholesterol is important for some primary functions, for building of the cell walls, for the production of vitamin D in the body. So some level of cholesterol is important, and that's why you have good and bad cholesterol, and we'll talk about that. But I just wanted to make that point that some people, there was some research a few years ago and queries about whether we were lowering cholesterol to too low a level. But at the present time, especially people with risk factors, we say the lower your cholesterol, better.
So we'll go on to look at good and bad cholesterol in a minute. But I know you have a slide there that's going to be helping us to identify the symptoms of high.
Right. So just before I show that slide, which is slide 2, let me just say that high cholesterol is another one of those silent
killers.
Yeah, I don't like to use the word killers, but silent diseases. Like high blood pressure, like diabetes in the early stages, cholesterol, you can walk around with a high cholesterol for years. In fact, we now know that children from early years can have a high cholesterol.
Right. I was looking at that statistic where the number of overweight students has risen by, in schools, they said, doubled in the last decade.
Yes.
So obesity is no longer, a cosmetic concern. It's a real health issue.
It's a real health issue, and I know we had the uproar about the former Minister of Health
fat shaming.
about fat shaming, and we're certainly not doing that. We're not doing fat shaming, but we're certainly saying that being overweight is not good for our kids. In fact, today I was talking to, I think, a first-time patient, and they mentioned that they're concerned about their son, who is about 240 pounds, and he's only in his teenage years. And the point I made to them is that they really need to get him to start exercising.
Modification.
And behavioral modification, as you know, Linda, is one of the most difficult things to do.
It is.
So let's just show slide 2. So in this slide, we see that there's plaque building up over time. So too much cholesterol in the body, and that's an artery. You're seeing a sort of cut of the artery, and plaque is building up slowly. And what happens over a long period of time is that the artery begins to narrow, and the blood supply to that part of the body is decreased. So we can just come off that slide.
So that's a symptom of high cholesterol.
Symptom of high cholesterol. So that was emphasizing maybe the heart, but of course we know high cholesterol can clog up arteries to any part of the body. So in the early stages, and this is why now we're becoming more proactive about measuring cholesterol levels in high-risk groups.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to jump ahead of myself because we will talk about that, okay? So not everyone, I wouldn't advocate teenagers having their cholesterol levels measured necessarily unless there's a very strong family history of heart disease and diabetes, etc. But what happens over a period of time, cholesterol levels build up, the plaque builds up in the arteries narrow, and then by the time you start having symptoms, so the typical symptoms people think of high cholesterol, which is chest pains, you don't get that until your arteries are really blocked. There are some external signs on the skin, though. There sometimes can be plaque buildup around the eyes and even around the knuckle areas. And that's a sign of really high cholesterol. So again, by the time you see those kind of skin tags around the eye or even around the cornea, there's a sign that you can look for that can give you a hint that this patient may have a high cholesterol. But very often, the patient has no symptoms at all.
Right, so it's silent.
It's very often silent. And as healthcare professionals, the art of dealing with this is to decide which patients do you need to really send for cholesterol testing.
Okay. Well, should we, at a certain age, start cholesterol testing?
Well, I think if you're over 30, I'm not sure if the American Heart Association has a specific guideline, but certainly the American Diabetic Association, if you are diabetic, so of course we have people who are diabetic from their teenage years. Now, if you're type 1 diabetic, we don't advocate cholesterol testing from if you're under 10 in the first 5 years of diabetes. But as you get into 10 years of diabetes, type 1 diabetes, but if you're type 2, from diagnosis, I think you should have your cholesterol checked. Okay. And if you don't have diabetes, I think by the time you hit around 30, you should be having your cholesterol checked. And I think we need to define.
Yeah. So just wanted to mention that it's your health, your choice, and you can WhatsApp us your questions, which we'll be taking from 8:30 on 360-0105. 360-0105. And from 8:30, we'll be taking live calls, because we're live tonight on Wednesday.
The number for the live calls will also come up at that stage.
If you're looking at us on a Thursday or a Sunday, sorry about the inconvenience.
And I believe the program is also streamed live on Facebook, ACTN The Voice.
Okay.
And you can go back and look at the programs on that Facebook page.
That's right. Okay. Right. So let's move on then to your next slide. What do you want?
Which is testing for cholesterol. So you were asking, Linda, when should we test for cholesterol? So we're saying if you don't have diabetes, etc., I would say it's a good idea. Over 30, you should start testing your cholesterol every few years. Now, the thing about this is that I know a lot of people go to the pharmacies and they have a finger prick test and they're given their total cholesterol. Well, as you know, that's not good enough. You should really be looking at your lipid profile. So I'm going to bring up slide 3. Slide 3, you look at your HDL, your LDL, and this slide doesn't show it, but your triglycerides. So we are not just interested in your total cholesterol, we're interested in the good and bad cholesterol as well.
Right. So just if you could just define for us what LDL means and what HDL means.
Okay, so we can just come off that slide. Well, actually, it's on the slide.
Yes.
LDL is low density lipoprotein, and HDL is high density lipoprotein. And when you do a lipid profile, so generally we'll ask our patients to fast overnight. However, let me make this point. Recently, since last year, the American Heart Association, I believe, has said fasting is really no longer required to do a lipid profile. Now, I know most of the labs are still asking their patients to fast, and especially some of my patients who are on insulin, it's very difficult for them to fast overnight. And they try to fast and then they go hypo. And I have to tell you, Linda, I sometimes tell patients, I'm not telling you to lie, but I am telling you, you don't have to fast to do your lipid profile. So
if you're diabetic?
No.
Just across, generally?
They're saying across the board. Actually, the only thing that is really affected by not fasting or having a big meal before doing a lipid profile is probably your triglycerides. So I wouldn't advocate taking a big meal just before going to do it. But this idea of having to do this 12-hour and 14-hour fast is a little bit outdated. So maybe some of the labs need to look up the latest guidelines and see what the American Heart Association is advocating now, because my last reading of it is that you no longer really need to fast. But let's just say you're fasting. From about 10 p.m., you fast overnight, you can have water to drink, and you don't eat anything in the morning, and you go and you take a blood test, and that will give you the lipid profile. So you get your total cholesterol, you get your LDL, which is the low-density lipoprotein.
Which is a good one or the bad one?
That's a bad one.
That's a bad one.
Then you get your HDL, which is the high-density lipoprotein, which is the good one. Cholesterol. Then you get something called the VLDL. That's a very low-density lipoprotein, which is a precursor to the LDL. So the LDL and VLDL are the bad cholesterols. And then you have your triglycerides, which is something that we'll come to in a minute. The triglyceride is a separate entity that we measure as well. Okay.
All right. So I want to just touch on the next slide, which is the difference between the good and the bad.
The good and the bad cholesterol.
So this is the good one on slide 5.
So, well, slide 5, it's not really, we can bring it up, It's really showing a fruit, I guess.
No, those are olives.
Olives?
Yeah. So Mediterranean diets apparently are low in cholesterol.
And the slide 4, you can see slide 4. Well, obviously that looks like a
so red meats are high in bad cholesterol.
Dairy fat, full cream dairy milk, animal fats, and of course we're going to come to what is trans fats in a while. But the good cholesterol can boost. So what we want is to raise the HDL level. And there are things like olive oil and the Mediterranean type diet that can actually boost HDL. And we'll come to some of the foods as well. You had a list of foods that we can talk about that can actually lower LDL and raise HDL. So it's important to, while we are saying that your body is producing cholesterol, there are foods as well that can raise LDL, and there are other foods that can raise the HDL. So you have the good and bad cholesterol. And the key to this is, when patients come in, before we rush into medication, we need to talk about the lifestyle changes that they need first. And if they can do the lifestyle changes, sometimes we can defer putting them onto medication for quite a while.
So we can rate our plates and dietary modifications.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so triglycerides was the next one we wanted to look at.
The slide I have for triglycerides really doesn't show you very much. So I wouldn't worry to bring up that slide. But the body converts excess calories, sugar, and alcohol into triglycerides. So I want to repeat that. So the body converts excess calories, sugar, and alcohol into triglycerides. And this is a type of fat that is carried in the blood and is stored in the fat cells. So, and these fat cells are throughout the body. And especially if your triglycerides are high, it can even seep into the liver. And we talked about a fatty liver. And one of the things is, if you're very overweight, inactive, smokers, and heavy drinkers send up their triglyceride. So triglycerides in particular can be worked on from a lifestyle point of view.
Okay.
Do we have to go to a break?
Yes, we're going to our first break, and when we come back, don't forget we are taking your WhatsApp calls, and we will try to answer as many of your questions as possible. It doesn't have to be on Cholesterol 101, but because Dr. Khan is willing to answer any of your health concerns. So that number, the WhatsApp number is 360-0105, and when we come back after the break, we'll be looking again at various aspects of cholesterol in your body and what the difference, what we can do with foods to handle our cholesterol levels. We return in a few minutes. Your health, your choice.
Looking for a safe place for the whole family? Well, now you've found it. We are ACTN The Voice, your family-friendly station. Whether it's current affairs, kids and classic TV, sport and community features, Christian and music programming, plus so much more, ACTN is the station for you. Join us each day for programming that puts morals, values, and family first. We are ACTN The Voice, your family-friendly station.
Hi, this is Denise Plummer, and you're watching ACTN. There's no turning back, oh no, 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 no.
With Jesus on your side, that's the way to go. There's no turning back, oh no, 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 no. 'Cause there is nothing greater when Jesus gives you favor. There's no turning back, oh no, 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 no.
Your Saturday mornings just got a whole lot better on ACTN The Voice. Every Saturday from 7:30 a.m., tune into the classic kids programming, starting with Rocky and Bullwinkle at 7:30 a.m., Chip and Dale at 8 a.m., The Muppet Show at 8:30 a.m. Fraggle Rock at 9 a.m. Flintstones at 9:30 a.m. and Top Cat at 10 a.m. Kids Classic TV, only on ACTN The Voice.
Welcome back. And if you're paying attention, first half, got that last question. Right. So we have a little hit that WhatsApp messages are not being answered immediately, but you can still send your questions, and Dr. Khan will answer them individually.
Yeah. So the number for that is 48. Well, not tonight. We can't answer the questions tonight on WhatsApp. The number will be 482-4269. 482-4269. So that's during the day. Tomorrow morning, you can, if you have any questions, but you can call in.
You can call in now on 652-4855 if you're viewing on live with us this evening on Wednesday, the 26th of June.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up the flyer.
Okay, so before the break, we were looking at triglycerides.
Oh, I just wanted to, we have a family fair.
Okay.
Family fair this Saturday. And I just wanted to make one last plug. Right. So the community, Linda, you want to tell us about this?
It's an annual community fair that we have in the Coquier Recreation Ground. So it's on Saturday from 12 noon till 7 p.m.
Yep.
And we've got things that are pretty exciting for kids, especially after their last exams. And I know SEA results are coming out this week too, so it'll be a nice little celebration for the family to come out and do some pony riding. There's a petting zoo. We have taekwondo exhibitions. We have plants for sale, cosmetics, and we also have health checks.
Right, so we have the Southwest Regional Health Authority, they're sending their caravan, and we'll be doing blood sugar testing. So we could just come off that flyer now. We're doing blood pressure testing, blood sugar testing. We're going to have some nurses and doctors to give advice, etc. So
eye testing as well.
Yes, we have one of the opticians are coming in, and they're going to be doing eye testing as well. So all that is free. The only thing that will be on sale is food, but everything else is free. So this has been hosted by the Anaposis Chapel, and it's on the Coquier Recreation Ground. So all are invited, 12 to 7 p.m.
On Saturday, the 29th of June.
So if you're looking at, obviously, if you're looking at this program next week, the week after, sorry, you would have missed it until next year.
Yes, an annual event. Okay, so we've looked at defining cholesterol, we've looked at the symptoms of cholesterol, we looked at the good and the bad and the triglycerides, and we've looked at some of the foods. What do you want to move on to next?
So we can bring up slide 8. Slide 8 looks at some of the foods that we would have considered traditionally to be high in cholesterol, things like eggs, shrimp, lobster, but the ideas behind this has changed a little bit. So while we are saying that some of these foods are high in cholesterol, what we emphasize, so we can just come off that again. Some people, it seems to be, they respond very easily to some of these foods. So they are what are called high responders to foods.
Probably genetic factors.
Genetic factors as well. But for the more important aspects are the saturated fats, which are present in things like full cream milk,
red meats,
and then we, as I said, we'll talk about the trans fats, which are even more dangerous. So where cholesterol and diet is concerned, we are saying things that we have traditionally considered. Yes, they are things that you need to look at and cut back, because we generally say daily cholesterol limits, it's about 300 milligrams.
And an egg is just 180.
And one egg
yeah.
would be about 186 milligrams of cholesterol.
So,
but the way the body handles that will be different for different people.
Yeah.
So, we're not saying that you can't have any eggs, or you can't have shrimp or lobsters, but you have to know your individual risk profile in terms of the foods that you're eating.
Right. Is there anything else on foods you want to share?
Well, we can come back. We'll come back to the foods in a minute. But I wanted we were going to talk a little bit about family history.
Right. So we're looking at genetics now, then.
Yes.
Okay.
So family history is very important. There's just a photo here of families. This is slide 9. Thanks, Josh, for bringing this up. So cholesterol, we said, comes from two sources: the body and
the food
that we're eating, and either one can contribute to it. But some people inherit a genetic predisposition, it's interesting because I see this quite a bit in some of my patients who are relatively lean and slim, and they're trying their best, and yet they come back. At every visit, we measure their cholesterol levels, and they're really struggling to get their cholesterol down. A lot of people, especially from the Indo-Caribbean background, they have high triglycerides. So body fat is very important. And I always tell patients that if you take an Indo-Caribbean person, Indo-Trinidadian person, side by side with an Afro-Trinidadian person, same height, same weight, the Indo-Trinidadian person will have more body fat. And that body fat will often drive the LDLs might go up a bit, but what we often see is the triglycerides going up and the HDL coming down.
Right.
And so for the same level of blood sugar, the blood sugar levels might be the same, but because of the ethnic difference and the body fat content, the lipid profiles are often more deranged in the Indo-Caribbean population. And that's why traditionally we used to say that the Indo-Caribbean population was more at risk of heart disease and diabetes, but because of, intermixing in marriages, etc., the genetic profiles are intermixing. So genetics are important where cholesterol is concerned. So you have to know whether your
family history.
What your family history. Now, if you had a father who had a heart attack in their 70s, that's really not a significant genetic, because as you get older, your body will build up cholesterol. But if you go back into your family history and you see your father died of or had a heart attack, or mother in their 40s, and grandparents were the same, and then brothers and sisters very often, that's why the first thing we often do is take a careful family history, because it gives you an idea of what kind of risk profile that patient is at.
Right. Okay, so as we're looking at the word risk, what boosts our risks apart from the genetics?
Right. So we could bring up slide 10.
Saturated and unsaturated fats.
so that's a nice piece of cake there. So certainly a diet high in saturated fats and cholesterol. A family history.
We've done that.
And being overweight or we don't like the word obese, but getting older.
Right.
So there are 4 factors there that boost. You say boost sounds like a good word, but raises the risk of having a high cholesterol.
Right, boosting our risk. I see gender as one of those factors. So that's
You're really going quickly here now.
Yes, yeah. Why?
Right.
Why is it that women are more predisposed to high cholesterol than men?
Well, actually, they're not. It's just the opposite.
At a certain age.
So if we can just show this slide 11. Slide 11. So let's say that's a daughter and mother. So in terms of gender, actually women have a gender protection.
Until a certain age.
Yes.
I'm putting you hard on this one.
Well, I'm trying to explain. And by the way, you're welcome to ring in now if you want, so we can clarify some of these issues. What happens is estrogens give you a protective effect on, it raises HDL. So women tend to have higher levels of HDL than men until the menopause.
Right.
So after the menopause, when estrogen levels drop, HDL levels begin to drop, and women then begin to pick up, catch up on men in terms of heart disease. Now, you know, there have been lots of papers written on this, and I remember our daughter having to do a paper this year on about gender inequalities in terms of healthcare, and we were talking about that, and it's well documented in lots of scientific papers that in terms of heart disease, it's often underestimated in women as compared to men because of this idea that women have a gender protection. But so you are right in what you're saying, that women catch up on men, but they don't necessarily have a higher risk. Their risk is they have a protective effect
And just removed.
and after the menopause, when estrogen levels drop, then that gender protection is removed.
Yeah. Okay. So women over 50 are likely to develop high cholesterol.
Well, yes, and you know, as part of the routine health checks that are done, I would say from your, we are saying after the menopause, but from your 30s and 40s, you should be measuring your cholesterol levels.
Because a lot of women are perimenopausal.
For a few years before the menopause. Okay. And, you know, we shouldn't underestimate. So the typical signs when we talk about high cholesterol, remember, when we were talking about signs of a high cholesterol clogs up arteries to your heart, but also clogs up arteries to your brain.
Yes.
And so a high cholesterol also puts you at risk of strokes. And there's actually something called vascular dementia. So, you know, very often people only talk about Alzheimer's in terms of dementia, but there are different types of dementia. And but there is a relationship that I read about that between Alzheimer's and high cholesterol. But a high cholesterol can also lead to clogging up of your arteries, which together with diabetes and hypertension. So diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol puts you at risk of heart disease and strokes as well. And also peripheral vascular disease, which is blood supply to your legs. And for men, unfortunately, it puts you at risk of erectile dysfunction. So I have to treat a lot of men. You want me to go past that quickly? But no, this is important. Actually,
we have a phone call.
Oh, we have a phone call.
Thank God.
I wanted to talk about erectile dysfunction, but
yes. Good evening. Can we have your question, please?
I am on statin drugs for high cholesterol. And what I understand that taking it on a regular basis, it damages your liver. So I want to know if there's something I can use besides the tablets.
Okay. So this is a big one that we often, and thanks for that question. Frequently asked question. Can I just debunk that myth? In the sense that I graduated in 1989, so that's almost 30 years of medical experience. This idea, and I deal almost every day with diabetic patients who have to be on cholesterol tablets, because the new guidelines, which I'll talk about, says almost every diabetic over 40 should be on a cholesterol tablet. The idea that cholesterol tablets damage the liver is not a balanced statement. There is a risk. There's a small group of patients, just like we said, there's a small group of patients, Linda, who are genetic high responders to cholesterol. There's a small group of patients that may get a severe reaction to the liver, may get severe a reaction where you may have liver problems and the liver enzymes begin to go up. And we can... But the point about
is that treatable?
Right. So I'm passionate about this in debunking this myth, because if you're seeing a doctor regularly, it's like treating your car. You don't do like I do, send your car for a checkup every 2 years. You should do it every 6 months. Well, you know, if you're on statins, you should be having a liver enzyme, a liver function test, maybe once a year at least, once every 6 months. If we see that your liver function, liver enzymes are going up, we stop the statins, and invariably it comes back down to normal. So the myth that statins damage your liver so badly is a myth. It's exaggerated. So I want to state this very carefully, because I don't want people to be saying, I'm saying that there's no risk. There is a small risk, but by far the advantages of taking a statin, if you are at risk of heart disease, strokes, etc., far outweigh. It's like, let me use this example, Linda. It's like exercising. When you go out to exercise, you run the risk of a sprained ankle. You run the risk of getting plantar spurs. You run the risk of a car knocking you over. That's a risk. But surely you will not say that running is not good for you. Or walking is not good for you. You have to weigh up the risk. And I think, Linda, with all due respect, we have another call.
Yes, we
I
do.
am passionate about this. With all due respect, I think patients generally do not understand what risk analysis is all about. Doing medicine, one of the arts of medicine is doing a risk analysis with your patients. So I would say to this patient, if you have a high risk of heart disease, strokes, stay on your statin.
Okay. We're about to go on our next break.
Oh,
yes.
I thought we had another call.
No. We'll take the next break, and then if there are any calls, we'll handle those after the break. Your Health, Your Choice returns in a few minutes.
You're watching ACTN, The Voice. ACTN, The Voice, your family-friendly station.
For better or worse, yeah. For better or worse, yeah. Yo, Trinidad and Tobago, this is your boy Nathaniel, and you are watching ACTN, The Voice.
Every Sunday at 2 p.m. on ACTN The Voice, we will be taking you on a journey down memory lane with our Sunday classics. Relive the moments. Bonanza at 2 p.m. Little House on the Prairie at 3 p.m. Gilligan's Island at 4 p.m. Family Matters at 4:30 p.m. Hogan's Heroes at 5 p.m. The Jeffersons at 5:30 p.m. This is Sunday Classics on ACTN The Voice.
Welcome back, and we've enjoyed having your questions, and we're trying to feed you back with some medical trivia. Hope you got that one right. If you're paying attention in the last segment, you would have. So not all cholesterol is bad. We have good cholesterol as well. And that perhaps leads us naturally into the kind of foods that have good cholesterol.
Just to say, we only have about 15 more minutes, so you can still call in on the number.
Right.
652-4855, 652.
4855. We're taking live calls tonight,
Yeah.
Wednesday, the 29th of June.
Yes. No, Wednesday the 26th.
Sorry, 26th. Yeah, the 29th is the fair.
Yes. So, right. So we have slide 14. So we're just going to cover quickly some of the foods that are better for you in terms of lowering your cholesterol. And this is one of your favorites.
Right, yes,
oats.
cereals, fibers, very important.
Right, so the next one, slide 15, that's avocado. And so I think that's a donut.
Yeah, do not have donuts.
Okay.
Donuts, bad. That's bad for you, but you can have good cholesterol in avocado. So bad cholesterol in the donut and good cholesterol in the avocado. And also peanut oils and olive oils. We talked about the Mediterranean diet before. So the Mediterranean diet is high in olive oils.
Right, olive oil. So generally, in terms of if you know, people ask me, are there foods they can eat to lower your cholesterol? Well, to a certain extent, yes, whole grain foods, breads and cereals, oatmeal, fruits, dried fruit, vegetables, legumes. So those are some of the things, avocados, olive oil, peanut oil. Those are some of the things you can do to try and foods that you can eat to reduce your cholesterol. Do we have a call?
We have a call on the line. So can we have your question, please? Good evening.
Hello?
Yes, can we have your question, please?
Hi, good night. I understand that when you are pregnant and breastfeeding, the lipid profile changes. When do you recommend testing after breastfeeding stops?
Right.
Good question.
So that's a good question. And I have to say you've caught me a little bit
off guard.
It's not off guard there because I've not read recently how long after breastfeeding. Certainly you can't take a statin during pregnancy because it's not approved during pregnancy. And most of the pregnant patients I see, I share the care between an obstetrician and myself. So I handle their blood sugars and the obstetricians handle the pregnancy itself. After breastfeeding, you know, I wouldn't advise a statin during breastfeeding either. So I would say I would not measure your cholesterol level for, well, as long as you're breastfeeding, I wouldn't worry to measure your cholesterol levels. And so at least 6 months to a year after birth, if you're still breastfeeding, I wouldn't measure your cholesterol levels. But before, you know, time goes so quickly on these programs. Can I just say that in treating cholesterol, we don't treat a cholesterol level, we treat a patient. So on my smartphone, which I have with me when I'm seeing patients, not to read WhatsApp messages, but to
hope so.
There's something called a cardiac risk calculator.
Right.
So I show patients it. I Google it, and it's a cardiac risk calculator from the American Heart Association. And there are actually 9 factors we enter. So I enter the patient's age, gender, ethnicity, whether they are diabetic or not, whether they are smokers or not, the diastolic blood pressure, systolic blood pressure, and their cholesterol and their HDL. That's 9 different factors. So you can have a patient with a cholesterol of 240 and not diabetic, not a smoker, and when you do their cardiovascular risk calculation, it's below 5% or below 7.5%. And so what the cardiac risk calculator does, it gives you your risk of heart disease for the next 10 years.
Okay.
If your risk for heart disease in the next 10 years is greater than 7.5%, we say it's a good idea to consider a cholesterol tablet.
Right.
And if it's less than 7.5, then you don't need to be on a cholesterol tablet.
But to answer the lady's question, if you're pregnant, that's not going to be...
I would not worry to measure your cholesterol levels. And if you're breastfeeding, I wouldn't bother to measure it until you're finished breastfeeding. But I'm saying even when you measure your cholesterol, you need to discuss it with your healthcare provider and really weigh up whether you need to be on medication, because the lifestyle changes alone may bring the cholesterol levels down.
Okay. So remember, we're trying to do an educational program here, but you've got to evaluate the information and work with your health professionals. We have another caller on the line. Yes, good evening. Can we have your question, please?
Yeah, sure. First one, I have some results here. I did some lipid profile, right? And I just want to get a feedback on him, right? The total cholesterol is 227. And the reference they gave should be less than 200.
What is the, did you do a lipid profile?
Yeah.
What's your HDL and LDL?
Right, HDL is 50.
And your LDL?
LDL is 137.
And triglycerides?
Right, that is the one I'm concerned with, 200.
Okay. Are you diabetic? He's gone. Are you diabetic?
No.
You're not diabetic. Okay. So I'll just answer that on screen. So your cholesterol is 227. So yes, we say that ideally your cholesterol should be less than 200, but your HDL is quite good. Your HDL is 50. So I didn't forget to ask your age. So that's a fairly good HDL. Your triglycerides are high. Your triglycerides were
this is the LDL. The LDL is 137.
Yes, but the triglycerides were above 200.
Okay.
So the triglycerides, we say, should be less than 150 or so. What would decide whether you need to be on medication or not is doing the cardiac risk calculation and looking at what your risk factors are. So are you hypertensive? Are you a smoker? Are you overweight? All those things will be taken into consideration. So what I would say from that lipid profile, you can work a little bit on bringing your total cholesterol down. Your LDL, which was 137, we say it should be less than about 100. So you have a little work to do on it there. But the profile is not too bad. But the decision of whether to put you on a cholesterol tab, and this is again, Linda, what I said about the art of doing medicine, is looking at this profile. If this patient was 21 years old, I will not even think about worrying the patient. I would just say, look, lifestyle, exercise, etc. If the patient is 55 with diabetes and a smoker, you've got to be on a cholesterol tablet.
Okay. Right, so we were looking at the kind of foods that give us good cholesterol. So we said high fiber foods, knowing the kinds of fats that we're taking into our bodies, whether they're good fats or bad fats.
Yes.
And
so the LDL, we said the good foods, which were the whole grains, all those things. The bad cholesterol is coming from full fat milk, dairy products.
Red meats,
and also
baked goods, fast foods.
So now, Linda, this is where trans fats come in, which makes it a little bit confusing.
Yeah, I don't understand that concept.
Right. So saturated fats occur naturally in foods. So like animal fat, and we said dairy products, etc. Those are natural foods that you have. Trans fats are actually partially hydrogenated oils. So it's processed fats. It's actually a type of unsaturated fat, funnily enough. But it's because it's been baked or fried, it becomes a trans fat. And that's a double whammy. So trans fats are, unfortunately, I have to say, present in a lot of the nice foods, a lot of the baked foods, like we saw donuts, baked cakes, cookies, etc. Fries
and chips.
Fried foods. I have to say, I must have a little heel over my head. While there are some things that I'm still trying to work on to get out of my diet, but I have over the years cut back on chips. In fact, you know, it's strange when you stop eating things and you maybe just have a day where you will not even treat yourself. You say, well, okay,
Binge.
I actually
feel upset.
Feel bloated now when I eat things like, I don't want to call company names, but when I eat fried chicken and chips, etc. So that's trans fats. And trans fats take your triglycerides up and it lowers the HDL.
So it takes the bad cholesterol up and lowers the good cholesterol.
It lowers the good cholesterol and it raises triglycerides.
Okay.
And maybe LDL a little bit, but the triglycerides.
Yes. Okay. And then we need to know about our proteins.
Yes.
So I think slide 16 might help us with that one.
Well, no, I wouldn't show slide, actually slide 16 doesn't show you that, but I mean, the good proteins we mentioned is coming from fish.
Salmon.
Right, so they say fatty fishes, but sardine, salmon,
tuna.
polyunsaturated tuna. So the omega-3 fish oil. So I had a patient coming in to me this week, and they were asking about the omega-3, 6, and 9 products and omega XL and a lot of those things. And what the American Heart Association emphasizes is the high-dose omega-3 fish oils for heart protection. So that's between 12 to 1,600 milligrams of omega-3 fish oils. And there are actually some prescription omega-3 fish oils in America. We don't have it here, but if you're looking for a good fish oil, it's the omega-3 fish oil.
Okay.
But there's one other...
slide you want to show?
Well, Carb Buster, in talking about low-carb diets. So, you know, when we talk about low-carb diets, we generally, think about diabetes, low-carb diet. But even for cholesterol, there's growing evidence that a low-carb diet may be better than low-fat diets.
Okay.
All right? Because the low-carb diets can improve your cholesterol levels as well. And in a 2-year study funded by the National Institutes of Health, people who followed a low-carb diet had significantly better HDL levels than those who followed a low-fat plan. So I'm not telling you to go out and eat all the saturated fats that we talked about, but so try and eat the high-fiber foods, try and eat the oats,
the protein,
the good protein.
The proteins are take longer to digest, so you feel full longer. Yeah.
But also you need to cut back on the carbs.
Yeah, the white menaces,
right.
We know, like the white rice, white bread, white flour.
Yes.
White pasta.
And that comes to one of the main ways we treat cholesterol, which is slide 18. Slide 18. And I know time is going quickly now.
Yeah, we're just under 10 minutes. So.
Right. So, well, slide 18 just shows you someone on a scale.
So weight.
Weight.
Right. So weight loss is a byproduct of, we like to say, obedience.
Yes.
And, as we said, obesity is no longer just a cosmetic thing.
Yes.
It's a real...
We can come off the slide,
It's a real issue.
Right. So weight loss is extremely important. So what we talk about, and we have talked about on this program, is your body mass index. It's your weight over your height. But we're not just interested in the body mass index. We are interested in the distribution of fat. Because you may find some people whose BMIs are almost normal, 24, 25, but they're carrying a lot of fat around the tummy area. This is the fat that you have to work on.
Right. I think we have a caller on the line. Good evening. Good evening. Can we have your question, please?
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, Doctor. Mike, I have 2 questions I'd like to ask quickly. One, very severe numbness in both legs. I heard you began to mention something about the legs, but it didn't continue. And then the second one is the pulse rate and the heartbeat is just about 50, and I'm wondering what could be done about it. Thank you very much. I'll listen off there.
It's about 50? Okay, so...
I think he said 50.
The numbness in both legs, of course, we're talking about cholesterol tonight, but numbness in your legs can be due to a variety of factors. Diabetes is one of the most common causes, but if you have... I had a patient today that I was just reviewing an MRI scan, and she's having severe lower back pain and pain shooting down her legs. And when we did the MRI, it is showing a severe prolapse herniated disc, but also the cauda equina syndrome, which is the spinal cord being compressed as well. So it could be a nerve problem, it could be diabetes, it could be a vitamin B12 problem, it could be due to a thyroid problem. So if you're having numbness, you need to see your healthcare provider you need to have some blood tests done, and you need to have some investigations. I think the pulse rate, you were saying a pulse rate of 50. Now, that's a lower pulse rate on the lower end, and I'm assuming that you're on no medication at all. We now say that a good heart rate is between 60 to 70. And in fact, we're concerned about people who are running heart rates of even 90 to 100. We prefer that the heart rate is about 60 to 70. 50 and below is getting a bit too low. So you really need to have an ECG done, a heart, normal ECG, resting ECG, to see if there's any type of heart block, any type of rhythm disturbance, and then you may need to see a cardiologist.
Okay, good. We have about 2 minutes left.
Oh, 2 minutes.
Yeah, so
right.
Do you want to run through quickly what we
So we talked
summarized?
about so we talked about cholesterol, the problems with cholesterol, good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, the symptoms, and then we talked about...
Not all fats are equal.
Not all fats are equal. We talked about the lifestyle changes, the good foods, the bad foods, saturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, trans fats, which are bad for you. And then we talked about lifestyle changes, which weight loss, and we didn't get to talk about exercise, but exercise, cardio workout. Today I went to the gym this morning and I circulated on WhatsApp my little Apple Watch showing how much calories. And I did that not to show off, Linda, but...
You sure it wasn't?
No, it wasn't to show off. It was just to show our community that they need to be exercising as well. And because if you're preaching something, you need to practice it as well, as much as possible. If we can just bring
1 minute.
We can just bring up our flyer one more time, Josh. One more time, the flyer, our family fair. This Saturday, 29th of June, Coquet Recreation Ground, from 12 to 6 p.m., 7 p.m. We have medical testing, vision testing, we have a petting zoo, we have plants, we have loads of activities, we have five-a-side football, etc. You can ring on 482-4269 for more information. And so we can come up that flyer. Do I have just 15 seconds to give a pastoral insight? By the way, the Anaposis Centers, we are based in Vistabella, 482-4269, Chagonas, 66511. 41, and then in Penal on 222-2363. Now, what kind of name are you carrying around? What type of labels? On Sunday at our church, I challenged our church to remove the old labels, labels of failure, labels of fear, labels of rejection. There's a beautiful verse I want to leave with you from the Bible, 2 Corinthians 5:17. If any man or woman be in Christ, he or she becomes a new creation. God wants to give you new labels, a label of being able to achieve your destiny in God. May you have a shalom-filled week. Over to you, Linda.
Okay, so I'll just close this evening with a quotation from Proverbs 17:22. A merry heart is like medicine. So stick close to people who make you laugh, and of course, appreciate all that you have been given in life and keep a merry heart. That's the best medicine of all. Your Health, Your Choice returns in a fortnight's time with another interesting and educational program, which you can then evaluate to work with your health practitioners. Good evening.